Hello, stationery friends. I was encouraged this year to try out the Hobonichi A6 Techo, and I have to say, I didn't like it. Join me today to take a closer look at what the Hobonichi A6 Techo Planner is, and what I liked about it, and what I didn't like about it, and why I am gravitating away from this planner system. For those of you who are new to my channel, you'll know that I have been very prominently talking about the Traveler's Notebook Weekly Memo as my go-to planning system. I've used that for many years, and that has been my staple for how I approach planning. You'll also know that I have tried my hand at bullet journaling, and it didn't quite work out for me. So I was intrigued when I was encouraged to, or was suggested to me to try out the Hobonichi A6 Techo. I was able to pick one up for sale for cheap earlier on in the year, and it was an interesting 6-month experiment. And that 6-month experiment has come to a close, and I will be gravitating away from the A6. Let's jump over to the desk and I'll show you a closer look at what the A6 is, the Techo, is, and why it didn't work out for me. The Hobonichi A6 Techo. This is the English version, and it is aesthetically gorgeous to look at. This is the front cover, and it's a soft cover. So the spine here. So it just says Hobo and 2024 at the bottom. And this is the backs. It's in an A6 size, as I mentioned. It's a lovely form factor. I typically keep it in a A6 dedicated leather cover, but you can also use it just on its own. Some people, I know, put a rubber band around this and toss this in their bag. It runs for 60 Canadian dollars, give or take, or 42 US dollars, give or take, at the time of this video. And inside we have, quick look at months ahead, habit tracker pages, 2-page monthly spreads. It starts in December 2023 and runs until March of 2025. So it's a significant overlap. The monthly spreads, Sundays are in the red, everything else is in the black. These are 4mm grid spacings here. And then following the monthly spreads, you get into your dailies. Every day has its own dedicated page. It's got a moon phase up top. There's a distinct line down the left-hand side here that separates the right space from 2 columns of the grid. Halfway down, they've put a 12, and then a fork and a knife. And this is to indicate effectively timings, if you wanted to put that in there. And then the fork and the knife, I think, is for meal plans or what you ate that day, but it allows you some flexibility on how you want to use your day. They've left a blank space up top right here, and every single 2-page daily spread, a 1-page here, 1-page here for each of the days respectively, has a quote at the bottom. These quotes are from a Japanese web magazine and a couple of other sources, and they've been translated into English here. And then the bottom right is the calendar, monthly calendar, indicating which 2 days you're looking at. The Sundays are distinctly in red as opposed to other days of the week. For each of the daily spreads is numbered with the number of the month as well. This is Tomoe River S paper. It's gorgeous, smooth, silky paper, very fountain pen friendly paper. Being Tomoe River S paper, it's very thin and it allows you to maintain that small form factor. And you can see how easily it fits into almost the palm of my hand. It's very lightweight on its own. Oh yeah, and then the other thing I should say is at the start of every month, you also get a coming up page. So a few lines just in terms of being able to set some intentions or things, tasks for the month ahead. At the back of the book, dot grid pages available. Contacts page. Size charts, conversion tables, heck, even a ruler. Goals for the year, my 100 goals or my 100 things that I'd like to achieve. an interview with myself. These 2 pages this spread is about goal setting or just discovering a few things about yourself in terms of setting up intentions and things like that to help plan for the year. Questions or prompts like the one person I want to meet is, I am happiest when I am, the one thing I'm determined to do in 2024, things like that. And then, interestingly enough, a recipe for okonomiyaki. I think I probably butchered that pronunciation, but Japanese savory pancakes. So I think that was really cool and translated into English in here as well. Personal notes, and then a unique identifying number for your Techo on the back soft cover. One more thing I should mention as well is it is very much a lay flat book, which is really nice. So in terms of what I like, small form factor. Love this. It's really small, very lightweight, owing to the fact that it is Moira paper. Love the fact that it's quite aesthetically pleasing in my opinion. I really like the look of it. I also really like the fact that they've incorporated almost every type of planning methodology in here, short of the weeklies. You've got your monthly calendar, your habits, trackers, your monthly spreads, and then your dailies, which I think is fantastic. And I think really it's just the fact that I can toss this in my bag and feel like it's not taking up very much space, which I think is much appreciated. So why am I switching away from the Hobonichi A6? It's clearly a great book, as I've described all its praises here. However, there's just certain things that didn't quite resonate for me, and certain quirks I perhaps never actually really got comfortable with. If I take a look at the daily spread, the one thing that I noticed right off the bat when I got the book was the fact that the bottom space of the book was taken up by a quote. Now, I don't necessarily mind that. Sorry, let me clarify. I didn't necessarily mind that at first, but the more I read these quotes, the more it just didn't click with me. And they're great quotes and things like that. Some of them sort of just didn't quite hit, and others were completely out of left field. And some were good. But I think the point that I'm trying to make here is that effectively, to me, you're limiting the entire space usage of the page with taking up all the space for the quote. I would have preferred if the entire page was given to you, and I don't mind the top so much, that's fine. But if the entire page, including the bottom, was given to you and you could put your own quotes down and customize the page however you want. And I get it. You're never going to please everybody with a layout space. And for some people, they might really enjoy that quote being there already pre-populated. For me, not so much. And then there's the thing about the dailies itself. I mentioned a few times how I got away from bullet journaling. It didn't quite hit. And now that I really think about it, having used the Hobonichi A6, the thing that doesn't resonate with me is a daily planner system. I have a tough time, for some reason, planning on a day-to-day basis. And what that even does is some days I have hardly anything to write about, in which case all the space is wasted. And then other days I will just be so busy that I don't fill out the daily page. So if I skip it unintentionally and then go back to just a few things, which is fine, I guess, but I start getting wasted pages in my book or unused pages in my book. And going back to my style, I really prefer having a weekly to-do list. So just a week of activities, and then on a day-to-day basis, I can pick. So it's more of a horizontal spread, very similar to or identical to the weekly memo in the Traveler's Notebook that I gravitate towards. Now, not having a weekly page available to me made it difficult for me to have that weekly perspective in mind as I picked my tasks for day-to-day. I'd have to flip back, and I'm making it sound like it's some major ordeal, and it's not. I do fully admit that. But certain days, if I just didn't think to look at my list for whatever reason, because I was so busy, I would put down what I thought was really important. And then eventually I'd look back at my weekly list and realize that I had not tackled the things that were important for the week ahead. So not having a weekly spread page really affected me and having that in perspective. So what I ended up doing is on Sundays, I would write down a few things here and create my weekly list for the week ahead on the Sundays. Again, just because it seemed like I wasn't using up every single space in the notebook. And you can see here, I started spacing my to-do list out just to take up the entire space. It's a weird subjective guilt thing, I get it. But I felt like I really needed to make sure that the entire page was used. So I'd put my weeklies here, go to my daily, write down things, then flip back and forth as I went through it. Yeah, making it sound like a major ordeal. It isn't, but I really prefer just having very similar to the Traveler's Notebook weekly memo, just that horizontal layout of your week on one side and your to-do list on the other side, and you've got in perspective, and you can pick and choose and move things around as you like. And if I didn't get something done, I would definitely put an arrow or something to move it over to the next day. But if that next day happened to be further along in the week, I just lost perspective of it. And what I found for myself is I'd go from Sunday to Sunday and realize that maybe I only got half of the things that I had set up for myself in terms of the weekly intentions done. So those were kind of my two major fatal flaws when it came to the Hobonichi. Wasted space, primarily just because of how the daily doesn't work for me. How I prefer the horizontal or the weekly memo. Now, you could say to me, Frank, why don't you just use your wasted pages, quote unquote, and repurpose them? And I could, and I have, as you see here. I've put in some different ink samples. I primarily used the Tomoe paper for the fountain penning characteristics, so I will definitely take unused pages and put down my curly inked up, which I really like. In fact, this is my favorite paper for doing that, and I even like the grid pattern to help me kind of establish that. Those pages are few and far between. The other thing I didn't necessarily like is the fact that there's no ribbon markers. I think this book could use a few ribbon markers or page markers. I ended up using these Midori paper clips to try and flip back and forth. I put one on the Sunday because it had my weekly spread, and then another one just on the actual day itself, and then a few at the back, or a few at the front, on the monthly spread, and then another one on the habit tracker. And this is my way of effectively knowing where in the book those relevant pages are. Easily solved with, a few page markers or ribbon markers, I think. The other thing I personally didn't resonate with is all these pages in the back. Now, this isn't just with the Hobonichi A6. I tend to do this with most planners. The pages in the back, if they're got recipes or things like that, I don't typically use this stuff. I get the intent, and I do like the fact that it's there, and especially international size charts. I think that's more relevant than some of the pages in the back of the Traveler's Notebook that they tend to give you sometimes, which is, just like a departure card, which is great, but not really relevant for me day to day. They give you this stuff. I just personally don't use it. The extra pages I think is always nice. Extra blank pages or customizable pages. And my 100 never really resonated for me. I have a separate notebook to capture my goal setting and plans for the year, or a separate system, I should say, not notebook. And then I tend to make a bit of a vision board or a vision map snapping on my wall. The interview with myself, part of that same process for the year ahead. I have some vision boards, so these are unused pages for me. The recipe page, pretty cool. Actually, I even like the graphics. However, I can also look that up on the internet if I was so inclined. Now, you might say, Frank, why don't you take those extra pages and make memories, or write a memory page, or a daily memory thing? Well, the thing is, in my stationery toolkit, I already have other notebooks for that exact purpose. So I've got a Traveler's Notebook for jotting down observations throughout the day, kind of a commonplace or catch-all. I have a notebook dedicated for my 5-year diary, which is by Midori, and I've already got a space for those memories there. And then I've got a A5, which was for my long-form journaling. So in my stationery toolkit, it doesn't necessarily have a place for me to create memories or write down memories in an extra notebook. So I'm not going to do that. The Hobonichi, I think the paper itself is so beautiful that I might just completely rededicate the rest of this book, the second half of it, just to the ink writing samples with my fountain pens, because I really like that. And this can be used for many years. It was an interesting experiment. You might say to me, well, Frank, you just spent 6 months of your life working in a system that didn't really ever resonate with you. And I would say, very true. However, I think it's important, just like anything in life, to try something completely outside of your comfort zone and different, to see if you're missing out on something, to experiment, to take some lessons learned and bring it back to your old system, or realize that, yeah, the new system completely works. In this case, the new system did not work, and I'm going to go definitely very much back to my weekly memo for the rest of the year here, which I think is more resonant with me and how I plan and use my system. I will definitely miss the monthly spreads in the book. I think it was really great to have in here. It's a nice visual representation. What you get in the weekly memo in the Traveler's Notebook isn't as great. You get a few long spreads at the front and very limited space to write. So I will miss that for sure. The habit tracker is really cool just to see on a month-to-month overall how you're doing, how you're tracking. I'll miss the Tomoe River paper, which I really enjoyed, which is also kind of a double-edged sword. So I would have to say that while having the Tomoe paper feel so smooth, keeps things lightweight, keeps the form factor of the book very small, because the paper is very smooth and lightweight, writing with a fountain pen, it stays wetter for a longer time. I ended up always having to keep a piece of blotting paper in here, which is an extra thing to carry, I guess, or to include in your book. And I'd write down a quick note or quick to-do, or strike off quick to-do, quickly strike off to-do. And then I have to make sure that I put the blotting paper in there. Otherwise, I would get ink all over both pages. I really enjoyed the white of the pages. That was just completely subjective. The weekly memo has got more of a yellow colorway to it. What I learned from all this is the fact that I do not prefer daily spreads. That is why I got away from quote-unquote bullet journaling as it stands. I really prefer a horizontal weekly memo, and that's good. It's really reaffirmed that for me. I haven't changed my weekly memo planner system for years, and then to go back to a daily really reminded me of what worked, what didn't work, and why I so prefer the horizontal weekly memo spreads. And I think that's key. If you are really enjoy your Hobonichi A6 out there, more power to you. I think that's fantastic. Like I said, there's so much to like about this book. For me, it just didn't quite resonate. And that is why I'll be switching to my weekly memo Traveler's Notebook moving forward.